Welcome to Up and About with Peekskill United. We have a very interesting show for you tonight. We ended our last show with Memorial Day. We're going to open our show with a piece on the Memorial Day ceremony at Monument Park. We're going to have a discussion about the State of the City address, Mayor Andre Rainey's address back on May 29th to the city. We're going to talk about economic development in the city of Peekskill. And we're going to close our show with the Pledge of Allegiance controversy once again. Hi, I'm Bob Sullivan.
Hi, I'm Joe Torres, and also tonight we have a special guest with us tonight, former Councilman Vesce, and he's one of the great councilmen that was on with me when we were both in office.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I appreciate being here with you guys and look forward to the conversation.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
Hi, I'm Louis Seguera. And I'm your guy in the street, Bruce Bellin.
Bruce, you interviewed some very interesting people at the memorial. Why don't you tell us about that?
It was really a good day. I have to tell you, I had the opportunity to interview the commander of Post 274, that's Commander Donohue, and he's a very interesting individual. He shared some stories with me about the people who are members of that post and also members who didn't return. I also did an interview with Drew Claxton, and little did I know that she was in the service and that she was a medic in the Air Force. So that was a very interesting interview. And I must say, everyone that was there on that day had a story to tell. And you know what? A story of real American heroes. Go to tape.
The theme is we're all Americans. We're not Democrats, we're not Republicans, we're not anything else but Americans. And right now, I want everyone to know that that's what today is about, and we're not paying homage to anything other than those who died, and particularly the families that they left behind. That's what it's all about today. That's what it should all be about every Memorial Day.
Mr. Donohue, how are you this morning?
I'm very good, and I'm very sad at the same time because that's what this occasion is, and no matter what, this is what should be focused on today by everyone. You know, all of the centers and everything else, this is not the day for it. This is the day for everyone to get here and pay respects to those who gave all, but also to remember those families because they suffer every day. And if you look at the age group of the ones that died, even in Vietnam, they never got to be husbands, they never got to be fathers, they never got to be grandfathers. So that's why today is the most solemn day for veterans. And all we want to do is focus on the veterans and those who did not come home, and the families.
How long have you been presiding over this ceremony here at Monument Park?
Between Bob Bowedy and I, probably the last 8 years, and Bob goes back before that.
It got started back in 1970 when I was in the VFW, 746 down the street here before they closed up. I was a young veteran coming back from Vietnam, and my brother Vincent got me in there with the post. It means to me that we're honoring our own fallen comrades on the war in Washington, D.C., and some of our veterans are on that wall that I went to school with. I became good friends with in Vietnam.
I served 4 years in the Air Force, 1975 through 1979. I was a medic, and it really did change my life. I appreciated everything that it gave me and everything that I was able to give to it. For today, this is really remembering my husband was in the Vietnam War. I had family members who died in the Vietnam War, and what this day means to me is that is to remember those, because it takes a lot to donate your service and to volunteer your service. Many of these guys were drafted; they didn't even have the opportunity to volunteer, But throughout our history, we have had men and women who have stepped up to the plate and have died for this country, and that is what this day is to commemorate.
It was really, really great day. And Joe, let me ask you a question. You've been going down there many years. You too.
Yes, both of us. It's it's always an honor. it's a special thing that you go down there to see some of the soldiers that go down there to honor the ones that passed away. And Vinny knows, he's been going down there with us. So
Yeah, I mean, this year, unfortunately, I was out of town, but for many years, and for as long as I was a kid here, you can remember the tradition of honoring our fallen soldiers in that park every year. It's just one of the great things of many that we do celebrate here in the city of Peekskill.
Peekskill has had many heroes that's gone to battles starting with the Civil War. I was in Monument Park. I had the opportunity to look at some of those statues, and I was so impressed that Peekskill has been such a part of our country's tradition.
Well, I mean, it's got a lot of military history in it. We had the military academy here for years. We have West Point not too far from us. Yeah. And, it's been a great city as far as remembering the military, all the great things they have done, and some of the people that have passed away.
And just the history of the city of Peekskill itself in, going back all the way to Civil War time.
Sure.
And prior to that. I mean, it's there's so much history in this region, and Peekskill has played an integral part of that throughout the years.
What I found so moving about that ceremony is, remember, the names that were read in the ceremony we were commemorating are people from this city.
That's correct.
It was an auto mechanic that went and never returned. It was somebody's son. It was somebody's brother.
Sure.
It was somebody's father. At any time, it was just your neighbor. They were neighbors that went and never came back. So that's really why it's really important to never forget them. They were our neighbors. They are our neighbors forever, and I think we owe them a lot.
Yes, we do.
Absolutely.
Right. And something that John Testa said that was very interesting was, in other countries, they have cemeteries dedicated to those heroes that help them in their freedom. Yeah. So it's not just about what we celebrate here, because all over the world they celebrate them as well. And that's why I think it was a great event, great to be there, and great to be part of the city.
I had occasion to visit the Rome, Sicily military cemetery in Italy. It's all American soldiers, and when you visit that, you realize, you look at the headstones. I visited it when I was 22. This guy's 22, 21, 19. One was a second lieutenant, same rank I was. It's
very young man.
It's pretty interesting, and John made a good point of that.
You know what I found? That everybody in this city participated that day at that ceremony. The high school was there. They had their band there. They also had their chorus there. It was just great, and it made you really feel for those individuals who went to war. Some of them coming back, some of them did not come back.
That's right.
But every one and every song was about them being a hero.
Sure. I mean, they fought to give us our freedom, and that's one of the most important things we got to remember, is that they did go there, and they passed away in the war, during the war, and that's what makes this country great. We do honor these guys for all the great service they give us.
Okay, back on May 29th was the Mayor's State of the City address at City Hall, where he expressed his view of where the city has been and where it's going. Let's see what the mayor had to say.
I still look back and just think and laugh that I was just a young rapper from the city of Peekskill years ago, just trying to make some things happen and do what I could for these kids here. And to look at where I'm at now, I can surely say I think I made my family proud. So I want to say thank you all for being here. Peekskill is a strong, wonderfully diverse city that is far too often underestimated. But I came in determined that this administration will mark the end of old stereotypes, as we are focused on identifying city priorities and building a strong and enduring future. And as a council member, I and several of my colleagues have asked for an infrastructure plan. Unfortunately, we didn't get one. As a mayor, I'm directing the city manager to work with our department heads and to report back to the council the short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals in terms of infrastructure priorities. As a millennial, our technological infrastructure, to be quite frank, has been embarrassing. There's absolutely no reason in 2018 residents can sign their kids up for a summer camp program but can't pay for it online. There's no reason why a person must take time off from work to come into City Hall to get parking passes or even permits. We must change this if we want to continue to attract new businesses and people, especially if these services are taken for granted in other communities but aren't offered yet in Peekskill. I also want to thank Mayor Frank Catalina for getting the word out that Peekskill is open for business. Now, with all of that being said, under this mayor, Peekskill is priority. Since 2008, the city has heavily invested its time and resources into collaborating with Scenic Hudson, the state, and private entities to create an award-winning riverfront park and the most amazing trailway system. In addition, the Gateway Townhouses on Main Street with 14 market rate and two affordable units marketed to first-time homebuyers will be completed in the next few months. And I'm recommending that we put in place a public information officer to both communicate with the residents in moments where rapid information is necessary. In 2018, we've been very conservative with the budget, and we're working to increase our general fund balance. This council and our city staff are fully aware of the importance of good financial decisions, increasing our financial stability and recognizing our elevated debt and pension obligations.
Peekskill United had the opportunity to do a couple of interviews after the State of the City address. And other than interviewing, of course, the people sitting here tonight, I had the opportunity to interview Monica Flaherty. Now, I found Monica Flaherty to be very interesting as she was part of the transition team when the mayor came into office in the city. She started to talk about how the parking in the city, isn't a big factor. And she had some really good things to say, and they were very interesting. Along with that, I had the opportunity to talk to Bob Keston. Now, Bob Keston is currently running for state senator in this district, and he gave us a really good insight as to what he thought would be best for the city of Peekskill. And I have to say one thing, guys, that I have to thank those two for coming on the show, because what they gave to us was a lot of information and a subjective side to it.
Well, we all saw the State of the City address, but on tonight's show we have the benefit of two former councilmen who went through 4 years of State of the City addresses. What do you guys have to say about the State of the City?
You were there, so I was there with you. So you tell me.
Listen, there's nobody that has any more greater respect than I do for anybody that sits on that council or sits in that mayor's chair. It's not an easy position. Half the room doesn't like you. The other half of the room does like you. It's just the way the world works, I guess. Some of the things I found interesting, though, in relating to your interviews in this transition team, and I never really got the chance to really talk about that, but I just found it astonishing to me that, there would be a need for a transition team coming out of, if you were a new hire or a new political appointed or just won an election and weren't involved. But Mayor Rainey and those people that were on that council have been sitting there for a minimum 2 years. And really, I don't know what a transition team was needed for, because if you didn't know what was going on there for the prior 2 years, listen, we all see what's going on and how things have transpired. The State of the City, every mayor that gives that address has a revisionist take on history. I'll just say that as nice as possible. And that's not just Mayor Rainey. That's every mayor, probably going back to when my father was mayor. Sure. But it's kind of just the way it is. Some of the things they talk about in the past when they were there and either voted for or didn't vote for some of the things that they tout now as great things. Listen, it was a positive speech. We always, people want to hear that. Hit all the right talking points. Green energy. The youth. The hard part now is to make sure those things happen. And, hopefully the mayor surrounded himself with a team that can do that, because, it's easy to say all these positive things. It's easy to have those people behind you that are telling you these are the things that we need to do. But the reality is making that happen, having the abilities and the tools in the toolbox to make those things happen is the hard part. And, we're 6 months into the year now, and people can say what they want to say. Where are we since January? What has happened? That's a discussion, I think, for other shows.
Do you think 6 months is a short period of time? Maybe there wasn't enough time to come up with it.
Listen, it's a short period of time, like I said, if you're a new administration. This is an administration that came out of a Democratic majority that has 3 of the same people that were sitting there prior. with 4 new people. So there shouldn't be much of a learning curve for at least the people that were driving the agenda. Now, I'll tell you that, and I'll be a little biased in this, but the fact of the matter is, in my opinion, the 4 years prior, Joe and I sat there with Frank Catalina. You guys watched the meetings. Everybody in this city watched that meetings. We pushed that agenda, okay? The reality is they'll take credit for it. You watch how they voted, how they didn't vote. But we pushed that agenda. If we weren't sitting at that table and talking about the things that needed to be dealt with and talking about and arguing about what we felt was right or for what development had to happen in this city, it would not have happened. And you're going to see what happens now. You know? They got what they wanted. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. To a certain extent, State of the City is a political speech. In all
Basically,
fairness,
of course.
the mayor has to come out and toot his horn. But I think what you'd like to see, though, given that it's a political speech, you want the mayor to come out and say, all right, here's, we get the idea, there's 6 months into it, maybe they can't change the world, but you would like to see a plan going forward. Where are we going? And I think, as we mentioned in our discussion in the Rotunda, I didn't see that in this speech. And, the other thing that we talked about with the transition team, we did a piece on our show, I think it was the last show, on transparency and all this other stuff.
Right.
So they had this transition team, and these are people who are supposed to be directing the council on policy. Where's that report? Did they have meetings? Did they have meetings with more than the majority of the council in attendance at that meeting? I hope not. Right. So we're certainly entitled to see the fruits of what that transition team came up with, because, they're deferring to this great transition team that's setting policy for the city. And we don't know what they said or what's going on forward.
So do you think that parts of the State of the City address contained information from the transition team?
It's hard to tell.
It's hard to tell. You didn't hear any specifics, okay? Like I said, a lot of the talking points were hit, but it's the playbook. Right, by the playbook, hit all those points, and it's what their electorate wanted to hear.
Now, he spoke about housing, and you have experience with the housing, low-income housing in Peekskill. What are your thoughts on what he's looking to bring in more low-income housing in the area?
We have always had a discussion about development and affordable housing and how that relates to certain pieces of the development. And he did give Vivian McKenzie, Councilwoman McKenzie, credit for her fight to try to push for affordable housing in the Gateway project, and they got 2 units there. Mm-hmm. My argument always was, and I didn't think I think was appropriate for that development, and I think a good portion of affordable housing in itself for large scale developments, maybe not 16 units, but larger scale developments within the city has its place. My problem with the discussion is that you have to look at the city of Peekskill. The city of Peekskill, it's a fact, is the second most affordable community in the county of Westchester behind Mount Vernon. Every statistic points to it. You can look it up online. We are the second most affordable community in the county of Westchester. So what I'm saying to you is there has to be a good balance of housing stock within the city to make the city viable. I'll give you an example, and we talked about this earlier. I have every opportunity to leave this community if I wanted to. I don't want to. My children, I was raised here. My kids go to school here. I want to expand upon my home. Okay? I want to put $300,000 into my house. I can't get the money. And my credit's not the problem. It's not the amount of money I make. It's the value of my property. Okay? And that's what makes it difficult for people to build upon and develop in this city and expand and grow as a family and community and neighborhoods. If you have those types of comparable housing stock in the city of Peekskill, and you introduce more affordable housing, you're only lowering the value of the properties within the city. Now, like I said, there is a place for that in larger scale developments, a proportion of that. As a matter of fact, some of the funding that the state gives mandates it.
Yeah,
sure.
Okay, so that's very helpful, and we're very lucky to have the artist district classifications here and all the things that were introduced during the '80s, during Pataki's time. But it's an argument that it's nice to say, but you really got to think about what you're talking about and understand what that means to the people that have businesses here. You can't say I'm pro-business and I want all this affordable housing. Because there's no disposable income for those people that live in those affordable housing units to actually support the businesses that you're talking about wanting to bring into the city. So what I'm saying is there really has to be a balanced approach to what you're talking about. And you can't just say it because it sounds good. You can't just say it because it's the liberal or socialist point of view, whatever it is these days. This community, I understand, is changing. There's a lot of people that move up from this, New York City that are bringing their New York City politics up here, and those that are behind the scenes in this political party that run the Democratic Party are lobbyists in New York City or professional politicians. It doesn't help this community. Some of them don't even live in this community, by the way. They live in a
remember one thing
You
about
think that would be something for the council to look at going forward?
I think the council has to be cognizant of the fact of what that means to this community when they talk about we want to introduce more affordable housing.
Right.
Well, let me just say this. Just to bring this in, I think as being in business, most of us are here, is that the city is a business at the end of the day. Absolutely. And you have to learn how to balance that out, where you have to learn how to bring in things that'll keep your taxes down. At the same time, try to satisfy all ends of what your needs are for the city. And if you don't do that and you just go one-sided, then you're going to have a problem.
I don't think anybody in the council really can comprehend that fact.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem is that I know Vivian McKenzie, Councilman McKenzie, is a businesswoman, and and I'll give her credit for that, and you can see that, and the rest of them don't have that. They don't have that business experience, what it is to survive, how to create things, how to bring things in, how to negotiate something.
They also have the knowledge of understanding that you just can't throw in, all this low-income housing.
Yeah.
For a city to sustain itself, it's going to need a little bit of everything. Low-income housing,
That's what I'm saying. It's got to be
the
balanced.
market rates, the luxury, to have that balance, and that brings in a fruitful city.
Right.
I don't think anyone in the council, and they're all smart people, but when it comes to something like this, I don't think they understand the value of having enough for each different level.
And remember the thing about housing values too. You've got a young family, you want to stay here, your kids are going here, you want to expand your house, but you want to try and get at some point in time the value out of that house. You're going to retire at some point in time.
Sure.
And a lot of folks, like particularly in the condominiums, are retirees, and they don't want that price to stay static. They want home values to go up, because that's what they're retiring on. That's their nursing home money or whatever.
One thing, I could say, and when we were on the council, I think, we made great strides in that sense, that we knew that, we had to bring business people here. Even though we were a minority, we knew we had to make deals and try to work it the best way we can to feed both sides and make it work.
Well, you had to make it to a position where, you couldn't say no. You could argue as much as you want, but those people on that council knew the right thing to do at the end of the day. And, if they didn't vote that way, it was purely political.
Correct.
It's good insight. It's really good insight. Something that I don't even think I thought about. I'm glad you hit it. At least shed some light on that.
Yeah. Well, I agree, Bruce. It's very interesting insight, and I appreciate that. And let's hear what you have to say. You can reach us on Facebook or on YouTube. Hi, our next discussion, we'd like to talk a little bit about economic development in the city. And again, we have the benefit of two former councilmen here to fill us in on some of the plans past, present, and future. Vinny?
Talk about it a little bit.
Well, there is a number of opportunities still left in the city to be developed. One, I think the city just put an RFP out for, which was the Lower South Street development. The other piece, near and dear to my heart, and the work that we did with the LWRP to make the property more attainable down there at the riverfront, and then within that whole riverfront area is Railroad Avenue, and what Martin Ginsburg had planned there many years ago. I think that has to be taken seriously now that he's coming out of the Abbey. I'm sure he would. We talked to him prior to us leaving just about the plans for him to move right down onto Railroad Avenue.
Vinny, what is he planning doing down there?
Residential units. Not sure if at this, given the time in which he does it, if they'll be rental or for sale condominiums. One of the things in my idea was, he had some commercial on the bottom floor, and given the topography of that hill there, that he could build up to 5 stories, which is even with Route 9, so that there's no view shed issues or any of those issues that you have. One of the bigger issues, though, is the need for parking in that area. Now, with all the development and the Lands, project at the Peekskill train station as well, we have traffic issues down there. You have pedestrian traffic issues down there with the railroad crossing, which was a plan that was put prior to me leaving, and I hope the city takes it up with the one-way portion of Railroad Avenue. And then the discussions with Martin Ginsburg, if he does want to develop that property, which I believe he does, is talking about some sort of public-private partnership where he can build a garage for us on our property, maybe 3 stories of garage, and allow him then to build 2 stories of development over that, the air rights, similar like they do in New York City.
Well, that would be really positive, especially down there.
Well, it also takes no money from the city to build a garage for 3-story garage in that area could cost well over $20 million.
Well, that public-private partnership on that parcel that you described, a parking garage and residential housing above that, is that on the tax rolls, off the tax rolls? How does that impact our tax rolls?
Well, it's just a portion of the building that he's going to build next to it. It's actually going to be connected.
So it'll be
a portion to what he develops there would be on the tax side, or negotiate it out through the cost of the garage and how that's developed.
It's very similar to what I think he did down in Ossining. If you look at the Ossining waterfront now, he's got all that nice.
Made it beautiful down there.
It's really
But they didn't address the parking needs, and that's what Peekskill has to do here. And
Right.
there's a real need for it.
Yeah.
And the city of Peekskill makes money off of that as well, not only just in tax revenue, but the amount of people that come from out of town to park here to commute.
Yeah.
And then dovetailing off of that is this Lower South Street, which has been a debacle for the
I
last
wonder what's
15
going on
years.
with that. Those RFPs are supposedly out there.
Listen,
24
without
was the deadline?
giving away, too much of the information, because there's been a lot of discussion about that. But that property has cost the city to date, when I was there, upwards of $10 million in compounding interest, and the amount of money that we've spent there, not to even mention the environmental concerns.
And that's when you were sitting on the council.
Absolutely, it's only growing.
Yeah.
And I know they put this RFP out. I had a discussion with the mayor right after I left with a couple of people that were very interested in developing that property and had a conceptual plan that he was very excited about. So I hope he revisits that. I know they put this RFP out, and maybe that's one part of the process. But you have some people that are ready to pull the trigger there. Not to mention, part of that is we have city services that are in that area. Yeah. The DPW garage, the city maintenance facility there that handles all of the maintenance on our automobiles and vehicles and trucks. And to take those 2 parcels, build us a new facility on our property that we own in Corporate Drive, which is 5 acres, met with Brent Van Zant, talked about the needs. This was far down the road. Yeah. Then we're able to take all that commercial activity and truck traffic and all of that happens just with the garbage trucks and stuff down there, and have either residential, there was talk about the hotel on that DPW property, and as well as making the city garage part of the larger parcel of the 11.5 to 13 acres that the city.
It's a win-win for the city.
The city owns there, and forget the tax revenue. It's a property that really would dovetail very nicely on the south side of this city.
Sure.
With River Bend, what's happened with the Riverfront Trail, what's happening at Charles Point.
Right.
It's really the last big piece. You have Welcher Avenue, it's kind of cleaning itself up right now. There's opportunity there. I haven't been involved in the last 6 months. I saw the RFP. I understand there wasn't much activity on it. I hope that they're either going to put it out or revisit our conversations.
Not to slow you down any, but is there a time constraint down there because there's a cleanup program?
I think it's next November.
Well, they have the brownfield designation, which the planning department and Jim Pinto worked very hard on with our consultants to get those designations that makes the tax breaks for a developer very attractive. And that was one of the things that attracted these developers that spoke to the mayor.
But there's a sunset clause with that, isn't there?
I believe so. It's a year out or something.
It's a year and a half out.
Yeah.
And we're basically nowhere yet with the RFPs.
Yeah.
And we're halfway through the year.
It's a tough piece of property because it's contaminated. it was
If you got
contaminated.
somebody who's willing to do it.
Yeah, it's contaminated since
Listen,
the day the city purchased it.
and I know just from experience that the city attorney will say we have to give fair market value for that, but fair market value in the sense of what could be developed there, the cost of that development, the cost of the cleanup,
Yeah.
and the amount of money, offset that by the amount of money it's costing the city just in interest to carry it. Forget the tax revenue that we're not
Yeah,
getting.
we're not
We
getting
haven't
that.
been getting that for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So playing devil's advocate and speculating, you think this is going to get done?
Listen, I know there's an opportunity for it to get done. Whether the administration has the I don't want to say wherewithal. They have the wherewithal, but they have the desire to get it done.
I understand.
Yeah, you gotta be
You
able to
know,
make
fair
it.
enough.
You got to really be able to understand what somebody is going to be able to do there and what somebody's
costs are.
what the cost of that development is. And you know,
Do you think they overvalue it in their own minds?
I would say, listen, the reality is, if you really went to fair market value, if it's going to cost you $3 or $4 million to clean it up, then what is that property worth? Even though you paid $3 million for it. So I mean, you got to look at that side of it. You know, the cost of cleaning up is a lot.
and you don't even really know until
You don't really know
get
until.
into it. But the future of what that property can bring to the city, that's what you have to, that's what's the value is.
Right.
And you know, that doesn't come into play too many times in the legal discussions about what the property value is. I mean, you know, Bob, you're a lawyer, so, you know, it's something that really needs to happen. It could happen tomorrow. I'm gonna tell you that. I know for a fact.
Okay.
It just has to be a desire for those on the council to pull the
For
trigger.
the trivia, sure.
I'm kind of afraid that it won't happen.
Well, if it doesn't happen, I think by
You lose those brownfields.
next, not this November, next
Yeah.
November, 2019, I think it'll be done. I mean, you won't be able to
That's
do much
good.
of that property.
It's coming close, and it's coming
coming
fast.
So if we keep waiting, you
And it
think,
takes a while to, you know, by the time everything gets rolling,
Right.
you're gonna be, even if someone said today, I want it.
so
By the time you get done
if we
with
keep
all
waiting,
this
you think we're going to be rushed into a deal that makes even less sense?
You know, you
Because
hope
that,
not.
that
Yeah.
deadline is key
It
to that
could,
area.
it could. You know, the problem I always had and with some of the former members of the council and some maybe that are still there is, you know, there seems to be an ominous towards the entrepreneur.
Yeah,
The
that they're here to make
individual-
money
The
and-
individual is
they're bad
here
guy.
to, you know, take something from the city.
And make money off
and,
it.
and there's a lot of skepticism there and you know, that just goes to show you how much people really understand what it takes to actually, you know, make yourself successful in this world and then want to give back. But there's always those people there that are going to second guess you.
Sticky
So I'm
wicket,
hoping,
huh?
I'm hoping they're met with open arms. I know the Mayor Rainey had said in his speech that he's still open for business. And I'm hoping
Yeah,
the
we are.
people that are advising him behind the scenes are going to tell him some good things.
Well,
Maybe the
because-
transition team.
Well, I do have faith in the mayor.
Yeah.
one thing I can tell you from experience.
I told him from day one, I hope you succeed.
Well,
Yes.
You know?
no, one thing I
Because
can tell you from
we-
experience, and Vinny will tell you, is that, you know, behind the scenes is where you make the deals, where you know, before it even gets out to the public, you sit there and you work. If you really want to make something happen, you make it happen, and you try to figure out what's the best balance to make it happen. And that's the hard part that nobody really sees. And you're hoping that, you know, that this administration gets at that. You know, you just don't sit there and say, well, let it come and fall in my lap. You got to kind of reach out and start making things happen. That's what makes a difference.
You know, there's a difference though when they talk about this diverse council. It's a diverse council of one. You know,
Yeah, you're right.
All the same.
It's all,
individuals.
listen, they got full
Not-
majority.
You know, we surely had a diverse council because they were all against
Well, I'll
us.
tell you, it's very interesting.
It's you know, I mean, it should be easy for him because, you know, everybody's a Democrat on there, and it makes it easy. Should be easy for him just to vote and get what he wants over there. Because
Wow.
you
But
gotta
this
vote.
is not a party thing. It really
But it's not a party thing, but at the end of the day, you have people
Listen,
that are
you
supposed
can't
to
even,
vote.
they can't even buy a garbage truck without arguing. about it.
Not yet. It may happen.
This is very interesting. Maybe we can pick up the discussion. But
I think this is
what do you
definitely-
think? Let us know on Facebook and YouTube. For our final segment tonight, a discussion about the Pledge of Allegiance. And this goes back to Councilwoman Vanessa Agudelo, her statement and her position of not saying the Pledge of Allegiance at the opening of Common Council meetings. Now, this came to light again, or came to a head at the Memorial Day ceremony on Memorial Day, where veteran Willie Nazario had something to say about it in his remarks. And it reared its head again on May 29th at the conclusion of the city council meeting, where another veteran came up, spoke his piece about his thoughts about the failure to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's go to the videotape.
Things first. I wear a Purple Heart. wounded in Vietnam, United States Marine Corps. A lot of people think that the Purple Heart is only for those wounded in action, but in actuality, it's also awarded those killed in action defending our nation. In my travels, I never met an elected official who refused to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. We had that happen here, and it disturbs me. This is not the message we want to give to our young people. I've had to carry men into a helicopter after getting wounded, and God knows if they passed. Yes, I sacrificed for this country, and I consider it a cancer, an unpatriotic cancer, not to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. This is something that has to be stopped before it goes any further. It is a dishonor. I feel disrespected, just like many veterans do feel disrespected. You not only disrespect me, you disrespect those men and women who are buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Those that never made it home, who are buried on foreign shores. No, I will not stand for it. I couldn't keep quiet, and I'm sorry if I upset anybody, but that's the truth of the matter. I have family, grandnephews and nieces who are serving our nation. It's about service, it's about patriotism. It is not being un-American or being American or patriot when it behooves you. No. You're an elected official, therefore you are held to a higher standard.
Okay, the Pledge of Allegiance and the two veterans speaking out. What do we got to say about that?
I mean, I just, I understand how they feel. Listen, these are people that fought for a country. Some of them didn't make it back, and you know, they understand what they have to do. Even though everybody has a right to say what they want, the freedoms and stuff, but they fought. They shed blood, and they lost people, their friends, family, stuff like that. So, you know, I mean, even at the council meeting, when 5 or 6 people came up and said, "Hey, I'm with Agudelo." You know, the problem I have with that is that this is our country, and they're coming up and saying it's okay to hate your country. I mean, it's kind of sad to see that, because at the end of the day, it's our country. And we have to support our country no matter what.
Listen, it's bringing this whole nationalistic, Trump
Globalism,
thing,
that's true.
back to the city of Peekskill. It's how it all derived around this election, and it's just such total nonsense. My biggest problem is it's an embarrassment to this community. It's
Sure
really,
is, yeah, I agree.
It's really
I
putting
agree.
a black eye on this community. It's getting press outside of even all over the country. I had
And
a
the UK,
relative in Massachusetts that was calling me up about it. And listen. Everybody has their right. She has the right to do what she wants to do. But I, go back to that whole elected official thing. If you're going to be standing up for this city and representing me, you're going to do that in the most respectful way possible. And the fact that she never disclosed during the election process that she was a socialist Democrat, just speaks volumes about. And there were people that put her there and put her up for election that knew that, and they allowed it to happen.
And I mean, you hear it. I mean, we hear it all over. I mean, I'd say probably 90% of people we talk to are very upset about this whole thing, because, there's deep roots in here with their families, with military, like we talked about before. Someone that either went to war, or someone that served the armed services, or someone that lost someone from the armed services. So I think, it's that type of community. I think, you're going to see something happen, probably. Not something happen, but, when the next election shows up, I think
it's kind of interesting how it developed. Because you guys who ran against her for the election were at ceremonial, in a ceremonial situation in which the pledge was being given. Did you even notice whether she?
I never paid attention. I never thought of. You just don't think that someone's running for election is going to be anti-American. Basically, at the end of the day, that's what it is.
So coming out after the election could be contrived.
When I heard about it, I was kind of shocked, because you just don't really hear too many people that are elected officials, because really what you're doing is you're representing your community. Now, I'm pretty sure if you ask most of these people in the community here, do you want someone that doesn't believe in America or doesn't like America to represent your community? And you may get 10% to say, yeah, but I think the rest of the 90% is going to say, no way.
The veteran on the Memorial Day service was spot on.
Yeah, what he said, it's like
it really was something that I took to heart in the way in which he discussed just his travels throughout this country
and what he saw,
representing the Purple Heart and the Order of the Purple Heart, and the fact that he had to stand there and non-apologetic, even after the with a potted plant like that was some prop that we knew what that was about.
Well, he has seen the worst, and I think during the course of what he was saying, he actually pulled a soldier off the battlefield who was shot.
Put him in a helicopter.
And I think once you get to that point where you see, what Americans are all about and what they're fighting for, and who they're fighting for, you know what? He probably had every right in the world to say what he felt was right.
I think a lot of us feel that way. You got a small percentage that probably disagrees with it, but I think most people feel the way we do. I think.
And also, a lot of them left their families to go fight in the war.
Sure.
I don't think that's a mindless act, that they did. They left their families behind to go do something that I think we all say it's above what we've actually, all try and do. We try and do the best we can for everybody. When we go out there to fight for another country at times, that's not a mindless act. That takes a lot of courage.
Here's the other part of that, though, too, and I know you're a veteran as well, and the fact of the matter is that not one of these council members and our mayor has stood up and said, you know what, that's wrong. Have the courage to say to the convictions of what you agree.
Or right.
Well, I believe the mayor.
That's a problem I have.
As a veteran, and you talk about these guys do go off and look, the 200th anniversary of this country, I was sitting on a ship 13 miles off the coast of Libya. And why were we there? Because some damn fool named Gaddafi decided that he wanted to close off the Mediterranean Sea to Western ships. Well, the United States Navy decided that wasn't a very good idea. And so, do I care about Libya or do I care about that portion of the Mediterranean Sea? I sure didn't. But you know what? The president sent us there. We did it. And if need be, we were going to defend the right to freedom of
Was
the sea.
our flag flying high in the Mediterranean?
It always flies high in the Mediterranean all the time. But, getting back to Willie Nazario, I agree 100%. And I think these people that complain about the Pledge of Allegiance and we shouldn't make the kids take it, they lose sight of what that pledge is about. It's not to the Pentagon and it's not to the Capitol building. Yeah. It's to us, the 300 million people that make up this country. You're pledging allegiance to the Republic. You're either with us or you're against us. It's not perfect. It doesn't do great things. Right. And with Willie Nazario, I agree 1,000% with him. I agree that he has the right to speak up with that. However, I think at that ceremony, perhaps, it might have been better not done because it was a private ceremony. He is an invited guest. By the same token, for Ms. Agudelo to show up with her potted plant.
And not say the Pledge of Allegiance.
It's not a constitutional issue. It was a private meeting which she was invited to as a guest. It's like showing up at your house and saying, I don't like your pork and I'm leaving.
Basically.
She knew it was going to be a patriotic display where the pledge was going to be said. She didn't say the pledge.
It was an insult.
She didn't salute for the national anthem. She didn't salute for taps to the phone. Maybe she should have said
the other thing is, like Vinny said before, is that, none of the council members or the mayor had said, listen, she can say what she wants, but I believe in this country and I believe in this flag. And, that's her right to say it, but I'm not part of that. And right now, and we hear it all over, a lot of people say that, nobody's had said anything, so they feel that they're all part of that same category, where they don't feel like they like this country. I mean, that's what we hear. I mean, nobody say, hey, listen, that's her thing. But I don't believe in that. I do stand for the flag. I do say the Pledge of Allegiance, and I believe in this country.
I see you wearing one.
Yeah, I wear one all the time. Listen, I wear
the founding fathers saw this was coming, and they gave both ends of the teeter-totter the ability to do what they wanted. But I think, in all fairness to Agudelo, and she's doing what she thinks she can do.
But I do agree with
definitely Willie.
I agree with Willie in the sense that he says it's a cancer, because if you want to protest the country, there's better ways of doing it, more positive ways of doing it, to try to make better changes instead of saying, I hate this country.
The one thing he did say is the example for the children.
The example for the children, exactly.
Yeah, I'll give an example. There's a picture on Facebook with this councilwoman sitting in the stairs to the governor's office, the governor of New York, the Democratic governor of New York. She's standing there with all these people blocking the stairway to his office because they want him to do something.
Listen.
That's not the way to do it. If you want the governor to do something, you broke bread in his mansion a couple of weeks ago, tell him about it, you know?
She's an activist, right? This is her
Profession.
job. This is her profession. This is the problem with some of the university system in this country, that they breed this type of disrespect for this country.
Right.
And they, people are going to jump all over me on Facebook. That's the reality of it. So
You know
it
what?
is what it is.
If you're an activist, the system really does work.
Yeah.
For example, if you want free water meters for your condominium, come down to the city
That's
council
right.
and make your case, okay?
There you go.
I mean, but that's activism also, true.
But
The
I like
legal
that
way.
it was done already, and it was done by one of the residents of Peekskill, and our councilwoman got called down on it.
Yeah.
So you know what? It works. It does work.
It truly does. It truly does. What do you think? Let us know on Facebook or on YouTube.
For this session of the show, I'd like to give a shout out to the Peekskill Police Department. I think they are a bunch of most professional men and women that I have seen in law enforcement in a long time. They handle this city, they handle the problems, and they're always visible. So guys, you're doing a great job.
On June 10th, we have the Puerto Rican Day Parade in the city of New York. I want to give our support to them. We will rebuild, we'll rebuild stronger, and you have our support. God bless.
Well, I'd just like to thank you gentlemen all for inviting me to the show. I enjoyed the conversation, and I wish you all luck as you continue this. I think it's a very positive outlook for the city, and it gives the people a different perspective on some of the thoughts that are out there in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, me and Vinny went down to the Factoria over the weekend, and there was probably over 1,000 people there. It's a new place that they did. It's the old Crystal Bay, and the views you get on the Hudson are beautiful. So people, it's another add to Peekskill, and I hope you guys come up and enjoy it.
And finally, again on Memorial Day, at the end of our last show, we ran the names of the deceased from Peekskill who gave their lives in battle. So that you don't forget them, please listen, because we're going to read their names. Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Roy E. Adams, Cortland Baxter, James Bell, Lauren Craig, Matthew Cunningham, Clarence Curry, Cornelius Daly, Roland Donnelly, Stephen Donnelly, Thomas Gain, David C. Griffith, William Hall, Pearlie Hopkins, Joseph A. Kennedy, Louis Maeta, Lawrence McGriskin, Raymond Moore Jr., Matthew E. Osteen, Cornelius R. Reagan, John R. Signet Jr., William A. Story, Fred W. Valentine Jr., Bertram Archer, John Astrip, John Berta, Russell Baskin, Thomas Boyle, Leslie Conklin Jr., John W. Cox, Sheldon Craddock, Harold H. Kruger, Paul R. Dardis, Royal O'Dees, George A. Interland, Lee S. Farris, John W. Fisher Jr., Stephen Foreman, Everett Gothel, Saul Gerlich, Theodore Groach, Vincent Highland, Loftus J. Hoffman, David J. Kelly, Richard W. Lent, Donald McCrae, Thomas J. McKee, Franklin C. Miller, George C. Miller Jr., Charles E. Minor, Charles Neihart, Frederick Neihart, Alfred Resmus, Edward Renecki, Charles Roberts, Thomas Rowe, John Solero, Anthony Scaramello, John Simon, Raymond Smallheiser, Fred Smith, Frank Snyder, George Squire Jr., William Stern, Paul Pepper, James Timko, Bernard Tim, William P. Valetto, Joseph J. Williams, Aaron W. Wyatt, Frederick Tuttle, and Charles Williams. Oliver C. Chase Jr., William T. Dorsey, John B. Hudson, Family M. Kelly Jr., John F. Martin, William H. Irwin, John T. Lockhart, Michael Poggi, Harold McDonald, Chester Mosler, Douglas R. Mobay, Lawrence E. Osborne, Bruce Reed, Michael J. Amato, Baron Creed, and Frank Gertrude.